and welcome to MEE Live. Join us as we take another look at the news shaping our world. We are broadcasting live to YouTube from Middle East Eye's headquarters here in London. I'm Mathilda Mallinson. Today is Thursday, the 17th of April. Coming up, for today's deep dive, we're speaking to the lead lawyer behind Hamas's appeal for the UK government to delist it as a terrorist organisation, and finding out his team's response to the backlash that's come their way. We'll then turn the spotlight on a secret political meeting that went on between the foreign ministers of the UK and Israel, and ask our reporter who broke the case, Imran Mulla, how it got under the radar. But first, let's take a look at our three top headlines. In a move that has concerned Muslims around the world, Israel allowed record-sized groups of 180 Jewish worshippers to enter Al-Aqsa Mosque on Wednesday, breaking group limits that have been in place for over half a century. Israeli security services flanked worshippers who crowded the site, referred to in Judaism as Temple Mount. The move marks a departure from Israel's previous policy of limiting Jewish entrance to 30 at a time, since Israel captured the site in the 1967 war. It is recognized internationally as occupied territory. The Islamic Waqf, the organization that administers Al-Aqsa Mosque, told Middle East Eye that over 4,000 Jewish Israelis have entered the holy site since the Passover holiday began last weekend. Next up, Ed Sheeran, Elon Musk, and Serena Williams. What do they all have in common with Ahmed al-Sharaa, the Syrian revolutionary who, until recently, had a $10 million US bounty on his head? As of this week, al-Sharaa has joined celebrity ranks among Time 100's most influential people of 2025. The US-based magazine added Syria's interim president to its list on Wednesday, to the excitement of internet users everywhere. And why does this matter? Well, last December, after years of building a powerful armed faction, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, Ahmed al-Sharaa and his rebel alliance toppled Bashar al-Assad's brutal government in Syria. Once aligned with al-Qaeda, the soft-spoken al-Sharaa has sought to rebrand his perceived extremism and build alliances with other Syrian rebels, Turkey, and the international community. Now interim president of Syria, al-Sharaa shoulders the difficult task of uniting militant factions, liberal Syrians, and a myriad of ethnic and religious minorities as civil strife continues across the country. Al-Sharaa's Time nomination therefore marks a PR win, as the interim leader seeks normalization from the international community. He has continuously called for Assad-era international sanctions against Syria to be lifted.
أخاطبكم اليوم بصفتي رئيسا لسوريا في هذه الفترة المصيرية، سائلا الله أن يوفقنا جميعا للنهوض بوطننا وتجاوز التحديات التي نواجهها، ولن يكون ذلك إلا بتكاتف الجميع شعبا وقيادة. أحدثكم اليوم لا كحاكم بل كخادم لوطننا الجريح، ساعيا بكل ما أوتيت من قوة وإرادة لتحقيق وحدة سوريا ونهضتها، مستصحبين جميعا أن هذه مرحلة انتقالية، وهي جزء من عملية سياسية تتطلب مشاركة حقيقية لكل السوريين والسوريات.
And finally, one of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's charities has cut ties with a US-based Muslim organization after pro-Palestinian statements made by its founder came to light. The Archwell Foundation, set up by the couple in 2020, has given two grants totaling nearly £42,000 to the Milwaukee Muslim Women's Coalition since 2023. Until right-wing US broadcaster NewsNation notified the foundation of pro-Palestinian statements made by the group's Palestinian-American founder, Janan Najib. The Archwell Foundation ceased donations to the organization late last week. Coming up, our main story as Hamas challenges the UK's decision to prescribe it as a terrorist group. Now on to MEE Live's Deep Dive. For today's top story, we're questioning the lead lawyer behind a case that's caused controversy beyond the courtroom. Last week, MEE broke the exclusive story that Hamas is mounting a legal challenge to its terrorist designation in the UK.
This application seeks to remedy that ongoing illegality and presents the Home Secretary with this historic opportunity to depart from the British state's morally and legally indefensible policy of siding with Zionism against the oppressed people of Palestine. The application argues that Hamas does not operate and never has operated outside of the territory of historical Palestine. It has no presence in the UK, and it poses no specific threat to the UK or to British nationals overseas.
A team of British lawyers from Riverway Law, One Pump Court Chambers and Golden Court Chambers submitted a 106-page application to Home Secretary Yvette Cooper on the 9th of April. It blames the government's listing of Hamas for hindering the group's ability to broker a solution to the deadly conflict between Israel and Gaza. Legal documents seen by Middle East Eye show Musa Abu Marzouk, Hamas's head of foreign relations, instructed British lawyers to appeal a 2021 decision to proscribe the Palestinian group in its entirety. Hamas's military wing, the Qassam Brigades, was proscribed by the UK more than 2 decades ago, but the more recent decision by then Home Secretary Priti Patel extended the ban to the whole organisation on the basis there was no longer a distinction between the military and political wings of the group. Patel's call met with some backlash at the time, but the ongoing bid to get Hamas delisted has been no less controversial. Joining us now to stake the case in the face of this backlash is lead lawyer on the case, Fahad Ansari. Fahad, welcome to MEE Live.
Thank you for having me.
So the full application is 106 pages. Maybe you can help us out. In a nutshell, on what legal basis do you say that it is not acceptable for Britain to proscribe Hamas?
Thank you for asking. So there's 3 main grounds for the application. The first is that Britain is in breach of its international obligations to prevent a genocide by proscribing Hamas and effectively preventing the Palestinians from defending themselves. The Palestinian resistance has manifested itself in different facets throughout the ages, and its current manifestation is Hamas. Without a shadow of a doubt, by all experts' accounts, it is the most effective form of resistance to Israeli attempts to exterminate the Palestinians. By banning that group, you are effectively stopping Palestinians from defending themselves, and you lie in breach of your obligations to prevent genocide and to end the occupation of Gaza and the West Bank. The second ground is a free speech ground, that people in the UK are being prohibited from talking about in anything other than negative terms about one of the key protagonists in this conflict. It's applied in a discriminatory manner. For example, I can stand up and talk about how I support Israeli apartheid, Israeli war crimes, and Israeli genocide, and nothing's going to happen to me. If I simply hold up a symbol that's associated with Hamas, I could get 14 years in prison. So there's definitely a clampdown on freedom of speech of people in Britain and their ability to have a nuanced and mature discussion about the conflict. And then the final ground that's been argued is that it's disproportionate in the sense that you are impeding humanitarian aid efforts, you are delaying a political settlement, and you're acting in a manner that is completely disproportionate in dealing with any alleged threat that Hamas poses to the United Kingdom or to British nationals overseas. The evidence shows that Hamas doesn't pose any specific threat to the UK national security. It does not pose any specific threat to British citizens overseas, save for those British citizens who choose to participate in an apartheid state via becoming illegal settlers or joining the IDF.
Okay, you've alluded to it quite a lot there, but I just want to make the connection really explicit. Part of your case is made on the basis of the rights of Palestinian civilians. Is it right to interpret your argument as saying that by prescribing Hamas as a terrorist organisation, the UK government is essentially aggravating the suffering of Palestinian people?
So whether the UK government likes it or not, Hamas was the last elected government of the Palestinians in what was described as free and fair elections by international observers. Since that time, Hamas is the de facto administration of the Gaza Strip, meaning that Hamas governs the hospitals, Hamas governs the schools, the street cleaners, the garbage collectors. It pays the salaries of its civil administration. And that's the excuse that the Israelis use to justify the fact that this is a Hamas-run hospital, so we can bomb it. It's a Hamas-run education system, so we can bomb it. We're already told by the BBC, the Hamas-run ministry, we can't take their statistics as anything but biased because it's run by Hamas. I mean, this is ludicrous. It is the de facto government of the area. So what that does then, in terms of individuals who want to provide humanitarian aid to anybody in the Gaza Strip, they are potentially in breach of UK counterterrorism provisions in the event that that is seen as aiding Hamas in any way. So there's a major obstacle to humanitarian aid getting in, even if the Israelis were to lift all the blockades at the moment. There's still problems with charities have told us for a long time now that they cannot get aid to where it needs to go because of these obstacles. Doctors who want to work in hospitals that are run by Hamas are at risk of falling in breach of counterterrorism legislation because they may have meetings with the hospital administrations who may be effectively members of Hamas, and then that becomes a criminal offense. And by blurring the distinction between Hamas, the political party, and the Qassam Brigades, the military wing, this is where we've got a problem now in this country. And I mean, we've had these difficulties in the past in Ireland, for example, with Sinn Féin and the IRA. But whereas the IRA was a banned organization, Sinn Féin was never banned because a distinction was recognized. A door was left open for dialogue and for negotiation. And that ultimately led to a situation where we mercifully have had no conflict in the north of Ireland for decades now. And what the application seeks to do is to try to address that problem in the terms that what Priti Patel, who was politically compromised, did when she banned the political Hamas, was to effectively go against what has been traditional British policy for decades.
So just to be really clear there, you are not calling for the government to delist the Qassam Brigades, the military wing of Hamas, as a terrorist organization. You are focusing on the political group, Hamas.
We can't make that distinction because the government has removed the distinction. We can only challenge the removal of a ban from a group that's named in the list. What the Secretary of State, Priti Patel, did in November 2021 was to say, Qassam is no longer there, it's just Hamas in its entirety. So now on the list of banned groups, you won't find Qassam Brigade, you will just find Hamas. So we can only apply to lift the ban on Hamas. If Yvette Cooper decides that we'll bring things back to where they were in 2021 and we will just ban the Qassam Brigades, that would be a welcome move as far as our client is concerned.
Okay, thank you. So that is the case that you were making. Now, on the other side of this story, I just want to read you some reactions from the British press and public. From Spiked, an article titled, "How do the lawyers defending Hamas sleep at night?" I know members of your team have been asked this directly on air. This article, it says, the application claims that Hamas presents no threat to Britain or British citizens. Really? I guess the lawyers involved simply don't know the names Jake Marlowe or Liane, Yahel and Noya Sharabi, nor any of the 18 British nationals murdered on the 7th of October 2023. Another one which we've picked out is from The Spectator. It says Hamas is exploiting the freedoms it wants to destroy, and the author accuses you and your team directly of aiding Hamas to launder its blood-soaked record. The Home Secretary has also responded to this case, grounding down in the proscription of Hamas, and she emphasises what these other criticisms tend to centre around, which are the events of October the 7th, in which Hamas-led attacks saw 1,195 people killed, including many hundreds of civilians. What is your response to these criticisms?
I'm going to start with the last point because I think that's probably the most relevant in terms of the discussion. And I'll come back to the detractors in a moment. So yes, the 7th of October is actually mentioned within our submissions. We have provided a detailed witness statement stretching to tens of pages by Dr. Musa Abu Marzouk, who is our client who's providing us with instructions, one of the Hamas leaders. And he's given a detailed witness statement about what happened on the 7th of October from the perspective of Hamas. What was required, what the command and control structure was, what were the military orders, and what happened. And Hamas are very clear that their military orders, the command and control structure, was not to target women or children, not to target the elderly. It was to go in and attack soldiers, attack military objectives, and capture soldiers. What happened subsequently after the border had gone down, and after the fence had gone down, I should say, and after the Israeli army had completely collapsed within a very short space of time, was that other factions and other civilians entered across the fence and entered historic Palestine, and then there was an element of chaos. Hamas have said in our application and in their witness statement that as far as any crimes or alleged crimes are committed by its members, they are going to internally investigate it once this genocide comes to an end. And they are open to an investigation by the ICC or by any independent party, even if Israel is not willing to hold itself to the same standard. So they're very open about this issue. They're willing to be investigated. They're willing to carry out their own internal investigations. So in terms of how I sleep at night, I sleep quite well, actually, because probably better because I feel that this application in some way is working towards ending the mass slaughter we're seeing on our screens every day. People who are supporting Israel, I question how they can sleep, supporting a nation that has its leaders before the ICC, that is currently on trial for genocide before the ICJ, and that has been declared to be an apartheid state by the ICJ. So if you're supporting and standing with Israel despite all of those conclusions, I really struggle to see how you can sleep at night.
Thank you for responding to those statements. You are acting unpaid because it is illegal to take funds from a designated terrorist group. And I'm sure that you and your team predicted a backlash of this nature. So my question is, why did you agree to do it?
So we're lawyers. We believe in due process. There is a fundamental background factor here that there's a genocide happening. We were approached to take on this application to deprescribe Hamas. We were aware of the financial sanctions. We took advice from the Treasury. We took advice from external counsel. And we understood that there's a long and cumbersome process to obtain a license in order to take funds. Rather than go down that route, and because of the urgency of the situation, there being a genocide happening, and there being an urgent need for parties to sit down and talk with one another, we had felt a shared sense of responsibility that we needed to take this on regardless of cost. And there are 20 independent experts from around the world, including an ex-ad hoc judge of the International Court of Justice, John Dugard, Professor Avi Schleim from Oxford University, and many others from around the world, who all felt the same way, and they've all agreed to work without payment. Now, any insinuations that are being made in relation to myself and my colleagues, I would wonder if those same insinuations are going to be made about the various experts who have also supported the application, because ultimately it goes down to the fact that you have a team of people who are trying to work with their client to have due process, work within the law, and effectively work towards ending the killing. I don't think that's a controversial position to hold, and I don't think that anybody should be raising any eyebrows about that. In fact, those who are receiving payment to defend Israel before the ICJ and defend Israel before the ICC and defend Netanyahu before the ICC, questions should be raised why those people aren't asking similar questions of those lawyers.
Nevertheless, people have been raising their eyebrows, and people have been digging up, posts by you and members of your legal team. I wonder about the personal nature of the backlash. Do you not fear personal threats, or have you received any threats to your personal safety?
Sadly, in such a polarized issue, there are going to be some people who will make certain comments, either online or by email or by telephones. So to answer your question straightly, yes, we have received threats. We've received death threats. Members of our staff have been threatened. And it doesn't help when you have the Shadow Justice Secretary, Mr. Jenrick, making such comments on social media about myself, about our firm, and calling for it to be investigated. Very reckless comments. Unfortunately, the British state has a history of targeting lawyers. It happened in the north of Ireland with great tragedies with the murders of Pat Finucane and other lawyers who were acting for members of the IRA. And even in this country, with Priti Patel, not so long ago, her reckless comments about activist lawyers and lefty lawyers, referring to immigration lawyers, resulted in a terrorist attack being committed in the offices of a very famous immigration practice, one which a solicitor I know personally. So Mr. Jenrick really should understand. Today, we sent a letter to the Justice Secretary, the Lord Chancellor Shabana Mahmood, asking her to intervene and to come out with a statement calling on Mr. Jenrick to cease and refrain from making such reckless comments which endanger the safety of our team and all lawyers and undermine the rule of law.
Farhad Ansari, thank you for joining us. You can read more.
Thank you very much.
You can read more and follow the story on our website, middleeasti.net. Follow the link in the description below. Next up, we speak to the Middle East Eye reporter who broke the exclusive story of a secret UK visit by Israel's Foreign Affairs Minister. On today's Spotlight, we shine some light on a major geopolitical meeting that happened in the shadows. Another MEE exclusive broke on Tuesday, revealing that Israel's Foreign Minister Gideon Saar met with British Foreign Secretary David Lammy in an unannounced trip to London. This is the first known UK visit by an Israeli minister since the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, alleging war crimes and crimes against humanity in the ongoing war on Gaza. It also bridges strained relations between the two governments after two British Labour MPs were denied entry into Israel last week, a move personally condemned by Lammy. Yet despite the many questions this meeting raises, the wider British media has been slow to take up the story, even as UK MPs have spoken out against it. Among several politicians from multiple parties to have commented, Labour MP Zara Sultana retweeted Middle East Eye's story, stating, "Gideon Saar and all Israeli officials complicit in the genocide of Palestinians, you are not welcome in the UK." There is no international arrest warrant out for Gideon Saar, to be clear, but he has publicly defended Israel's aid blockade of Gaza, which is widely condemned as a contravention to international law, including by the UN.
The fact that the first phase of the temporary ceasefire was over. Today we froze all the trucks that entered to Gaza Strip during the last 42 days. We will always be ready to negotiate according to our principles, but I want to emphasize the fact that we fulfilled all our commitments until the very last day, which was yesterday. And the question is, what is going on when you do have negotiations? And our position is that during negotiations, hostages should be released. Due to the fact that the first phase of the temporary ceasefire was over, today we froze all the trucks.
Please welcome Imran Mulla to the Middle East Eye live studio. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks.
So this is a fast-moving story. What is the latest? What do we know about what Lammy and Saar discussed? Do we know anything?
Well, the Israeli government circulated on Tuesday evening that the two of them discussed ongoing negotiations to release hostages in Gaza and also tensions with Iran. Since then, the Foreign Office has confirmed the visit and the trip and has said that Gideon Saar was on a private trip, which is an interesting way to describe a visit in which he met the British Foreign Secretary, of all people. Now, Gideon Saar, according to some reports, has left the country, but this is completely unconfirmed, so he may still be in the UK right now. And that should give you an indication of the extraordinary level of secrecy that there is around this story.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. How secret exactly is this within government? And if it is so secret, how did you find out about it?
Well, it's incredible that this visit happened when Parliament was in recess, so the MPs aren't actually around. They're essentially on holiday for Easter. And we reported on Tuesday afternoon that Gideon Saar was going to make a trip to the UK this week on the basis of several high-level sources, including some close to the British government. We then reported later that day that Gideon Saar met Lammy, and that was on the basis of the Israeli government putting this out, and Israeli media started circulating it. So we reported it, the national Scottish newspaper also reported it, but no British newspaper, no mainstream British newspaper reported it at all for a full 24 hours until The Guardian finally did so. And I asked the Foreign Office for comment multiple times on Tuesday evening, and they wouldn't say anything on the record.
Yeah, this is curious that you broke this story, and it is not an insignificant story. It does not happen very often that we have an Israeli minister visiting the UK and meeting our Foreign Secretary. To be clear, that has not happened since the ICC arrest warrants came out. Were you surprised that there was not more take-up in the mainstream British media about what could have been quite a significant political story?
Well, it's interesting because this is the foreign minister, a senior member of a government which is on trial at the World Court for genocide and which is currently prosecuting a war in Gaza, visiting the UK on a secret clandestine trip. You'd think that editors everywhere would be jumping up and down in glee at the story. But of course, the secrecy of the trip required that the British media not report on it. So it's easy to see that the British government would prefer that Gideon Saar was sort of bundled in and out before anyone noticed, and that way they could stave off protests or, potential applications for arrest warrants. But that didn't happen because it was obviously reported on. So
Thanks to you.
Well, it's extraordinary that it wasn't picked up. I expected it to be picked up, and that didn't happen. So there was a full 24 hours where if you didn't read essentially Middle East style The National in Britain, you wouldn't have known that this was happening. Because it wasn't in The Guardian, it wasn't in the BBC, it still isn't in the BBC.
Still isn't, yeah.
It's not in the Telegraph, not in the Times, not in the Daily Mail, not in the Sun, and not in the Financial Times either. For most of the British public, this visit by the Israeli foreign minister simply did not happen. That makes it essentially a secret trip. And there still hasn't been a press release from the Foreign Office, which is extraordinary.
And I think a lot of people who rely on the mainstream media would therefore be asking questions about the reliability of this story. How do we really know this happened? But just to reiterate, you heard this from multiple sources, from within the government, as well as it being confirmed by Israeli officials, and retrospectively by the Foreign Office. Is that correct?
This is the case. So the Foreign Office has confirmed it. It is on the record now. There's no question or doubt about the story at all. And there's no reasonable explanation for why major British newspapers shouldn't be reporting the story.
Now, while it was not taken up widely by the British press, after you broke the story, it was picked up on by various MPs who criticised it, and also civil society organisations. Some charities, as far as I'm aware, put in a bid to the Attorney General for an arrest warrant for Gideon Saar. What does that mean? On what basis did they apply for that arrest warrant?
So they were asking for the consent of top legal officers in the country to apply for the arrest warrant. And this was on the basis that Gideon Saar... Now, it's important to note that there is no arrest warrant out for Gideon Saar from the International Criminal Court, whereas his boss, Benjamin Netanyahu, is a wanted man. But Gideon Saar has been accused by these legal groups, and this happened yesterday afternoon, of aiding and abetting war crimes, specifically torture And he's also gone on the record very recently in defending the blockade, the humanitarian blockade of Gaza. Now, of course, that's collective punishment and it's a war crime. So it's on this basis that these legal groups made the application. Now, I understand it hasn't been granted, so consent has not been given. And in any case, Gideon Saar is likely to be out of the country very soon, if he's not already left.
But those are serious allegations, and it points to the level of controversy surrounding a story that, by and large, went completely under the radar.
I mean, imagine if this was, the Russian foreign minister smuggled into the country for a meeting with David Lammy, our foreign secretary. It would be all over the media. You should expect a story like this. You would expect a story like this to be on the front pages, but it simply wasn't. And that is very telling, I think.
Yeah. And now, before we end the show, I want to ask about another story that you broke, just because we heard it earlier on today's programme. It was about a charity founded by Prince Harry and Meghan Markle that pulled funding from a Muslim organisation on the basis of pro-Palestinian support. Quickly, just remind us about that story and tell us why it caught your eye. What was so interesting about it?
So Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, who are in the US, they have a foundation which supports charitable initiatives. One of these was a Muslim Women's Association in Milwaukee, founded by a Palestinian American who wrote a blog post in which she called Israel an apartheid state, and she also advocated for, quote-unquote, the liberation of Palestine, and she used the phrase, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, which many interpret as an anti-Zionist statement. On the basis of complaints being made to Prince Harry and Meghan's foundation about these statements, they have cut all ties and withdrawn funding. And they had funded, they'd given them over £40,000 since 2023.
But this sort of flies in the face, I suppose, of a lot of the image that we associate with Harry and Meghan Markle as being quite controversial, to establish politics and standing up for social justice causes. Is that right?
Well, definitely. I think Harry and Meghan have, as they are often known in the British media by their first names, have cultivated an image of being social justice activists. So both of them have accused the royal family of racism. These are very contentious claims that are strongly denied by the royal family and others. They've also, declared their commitment to stamping out racism, and I think that many of their fans who have previously defended them are going to be troubled by these revelations that they appear to be, they have definitely cut ties with a Muslim organisation over pro-Palestine statements. So many will ask, does this mean they're uncomfortable with such statements?
Okay. Thank you, Imran. That's all we have time for today, but it has been great hearing from you firsthand about the story that may not have seen the light of day, was it not for your incredible reporting. So for everyone watching, to keep up with Imran's stories and all our other political news at Middle East Eye, just go to middleeasteye.net. We will post a link to his story in the description below. For today, that is all that we have time for. But before we lose you, we want to hear from you. Please send in your thoughts and questions to @MiddleEastEye on any social media platform, or email middleeasteye at meelive@middleeasteye.net. We will be here at 5 p.m. BST, noon Eastern Time, and in New York every Tuesday and every Thursday. See you then.